It's obvious that the person with the most to gain from Juanita Neilsen's demise is Frank Teeman. Not only is he losing huge sums of money, but he believes his dream for Victoria Street is vanishing. Increasingly desperate, Frank Teeman turns to Jim Anderson for help. Anderson is the manager of the Carousel Cabaret and a well-known underworld figure. He is also a police informant and a standover man with a reputation for losing his temper.
Juanita had published some fairly strident articles in May 1975, and towards the end of May, on the 26th of May, Frank Teeman gave Jim Anderson a cheque for $25,000 that was ostensibly to use the money to set his son, his wayward son, Tim Teeman, up in a club.
Meanwhile, Frank Teeman approaches the so-called boss of the cross, Abe Saffron, and asks to borrow $25,000 in cash to give to Anderson in place of the cheque.
Abe Saffron told him that he didn't have that sort of money on the premises. So the deal went through. It was recorded in Frank's books, and it remained there as a financial link at a critical time between him and Jim Anderson.
Anderson claims that the cheque is an advance for the purchase of a club in Bondi, but at the inquest, the owner of the business in question testifies that no money is ever received.
Within a matter of a few days of the cheque changing hands, Jim became very interested in Juanita.
The 1994 Federal Joint Parliamentary Committee concludes that Anderson is a prime suspect in the disappearance of Juanita Neilsen. But when interviewed by police in 1977, he tells them that he was in Surfers Paradise.
Jim's alibi was that he was on the Gold Coast and had been there for a few days, and the importance of this alibi was that it got him out of Sydney and away from the scene of Juanita's disappearance.
Many myths are perpetuated about Juanita's disappearance, but what is known for certain is that she keeps her appointment to meet Eddie Trigg on that fateful Friday morning.
My office is just up here.
Trigg works for Jimmy Anderson at the Carousel Club and has been trying to get Juanita to a meeting for a number of weeks.
Sure.
Eddie Trigg was ordered by Jim Anderson one morning, and Jim by this stage was utterly furious. He ordered Eddie Trigg to go down to Juanita's home at 202 Victoria Street, and Eddie went down there after having picked up Shane Martin Symonds.
Both Trigg and Martin Symonds are gun lovers who often go hunting in the Blue Mountains.
All right, fine. It's going to be happy days, Eddie.
The plan is to grab Juanita and stop her from calling out. If she resists, they have rope to tie her up and a pillow slip to place over her head. But the kidnapping is thwarted when David Farrell answers the door.
So I invited Eddie and his associate in, and they said they were interested in buying advertising for the Carousel to have businessmen's lunches.
In 1975, Monet King is known as Marilyn, a glamorous blonde transsexual employed at the Carousel Club and in a relationship with Eddie Trigg. He recalls a telephone conversation between Trigg and Juanita the day before the disappearance.
And I just heard Eddie saying, "Oh, it's Eddie Trigg here. I've been trying to contact you with regards to discussing advertising in your newspaper. Can I make an appointment with you tomorrow, please? It's getting rather urgent."
But at that stage, Juanita didn't know that there was anything to be suspicious about. It seemed perfectly legitimate.
Hi, I'm Juanita.
Oh, you're here to see Eddie.
Although a little late, Juanita arrives for the meeting as planned.
Hi, Juanita. Shall I come upstairs?
Okay.
Shortly afterwards, Monet King also turns up at the Carousel Club looking for Eddie Trigg and is relieved to see his car parked outside. Trigg hadn't been home the night before.
Darling, where's Eddie? He didn't come home last night and I'm worried sick.
Oh, Marilyn, stop panicking, love. He's upstairs in the office.
Yeah? Oh, thanks,
He's having a meeting with the lady, though.
Monet King heads upstairs to the VIP room, but is stopped at the door by Shane Martin Symonds.
An advertising lady, I'm sorry, you can't go in, huh?
He said, you can't go in there, Marilyn, he's working. I said, oh. I could see that he meant business and I'd never get past there.
There is still no sign of Trigg or Juanita when Monet returns upstairs 15 minutes later. But this time, Martin Symonds is gone and the door to the VIP room is locked.
Eddie's car had gone. I thought, oh, they must have come down the back door. You know, there's only one other entrance going from the top of the VIP right down to where his car was. It comes steeply down the steps.
It stands to reason that if somebody can leave the VIP room without being seen, they could enter it undetected as well. According to Monet, Martin Symonds is now outside, looking startled and agitated. Many hours pass before Eddie Trigg returns to the Carousel Club.
Finally went back up and I said, Eddie, what on earth's going on? I said, look, there's blood on your shirt. Where is she?
Where is she?
He said, oh, she's gone home.
Well, home
Gone
when?
home?
Hours ago.
When? I said, where on earth have you been all this time? Then he showed me his fist. It was black and blue. Oh, I said, Eddie, how could she have gone home?
Then how did she go home?
You've punched her. He said, well, please ask. Say, I punched you. I said, well, I haven't got a black eye, have I?
Do I?
He said, well, you soon will if you don't stop asking questions.
Monet, or Marilyn as he was then known, returns to his native New Zealand in the early 1980s and is not called to give evidence at the coronial inquest. For her part, Loretta Crawford claims there is a third man, high on drugs, at the Carousel Club that morning. She says she saw him standing over Juanita's body in the downstairs storeroom, holding a gun. Likewise, there are varying accounts of where Juanita Neilsen is buried, including one that suggests her remains are in concrete under what was an old bar at the top of William Street. But given that her handbag is found dumped alongside the F4 Western Freeway shortly after she disappeared, the Blue Mountains is considered a likely place. On their deathbeds in 1989 and 2003 respectively, Frank Teeman and Jimmy Anderson offer little information about Juanita Neilsen's fate.
Let's go look at them now, I said to Eddie, they're dead. And they didn't say a thing about her. I said, do you want that to happen to you?
Jim was the organiser. It was Jim who pulled the strings in this case. Jim was the one who was providing the muscle to remove Juanita permanently from the scene. He had the power. He was the figure who was feared in the cross.
In the early 1980s, Eddie Trigg and Shane Martin Symonds are both convicted for conspiring to abduct Juanita Neilsen. Trigg is sentenced to 3 years in jail, while Martin Symonds is given 2 years. Neither Eddie Trigg or Shane Martin Symonds are ever charged with the disappearance or murder of Juanita Neilsen. This is 202 Victoria Street today. It stands as a monument to Juanita Neilsen and her effort to successfully save many of the beautiful terraces in this neighbourhood. It's also a reminder of her battle against crime and corruption. The tiny house is being considered for heritage listing, but ironically, expressions of interest have also been sought to redevelop the site.
If there was a decision to knock the little house down and all it symbolises for the little person standing up for their rights, it would be very sad indeed. I think Juanita and her memory, and in fact the people of King's Cross and Victoria Street, deserve much more than squelch.